Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 3 Point Sports Talk podcast. My name is John Gustin, and this is recorded on Tuesday, October 23rd, 2018. Today, we're going to have a very special guest from my time at Ferris State University as our first fan correspondent. I'll explain what that is in just a moment. That was recorded yesterday, Monday, October 22nd. And it's coming up today because life gets busy, and it's still pretty relevant heading into the week following. It looks at Michigan State, the fallout around that game, what's going to be like for both teams going forward, best case predictions. I'm also going to talk about a little bit of the Detroit Pistons, and then talk about future upcoming scheduling, quick tidbits on Daredevil, the Netflix series, just random thrown in there. Maybe you have some overlap. If not, you can just stop listening after the Michigan State and Sports Talk part. But the Daredevil talk might be a little bit of a teaser for what's coming up in the other sections of the 3 Point. The 3 Point is for sports, media, and life, which is going to be a lot of life. Life is going to be travels and different sightseeing along with breweries. That's going to be a lot of it, really, is breweries, different beers, things like that. So similar to other projects I've worked on in the past, if you followed along with me so far, if so, I thank you for sticking with me. If you hear any additional sound or background noise or whatever we'd like to call that, that is Turtle. He is my co-pilot of a 4-year-old tabby. So, without further ado, here is my guest, Aaron McLaughlin. We are not doing video today because I have just woke up, because that is the joys of working third shift, but I love live TV. Anyways, we're going to jump into something that I'm really excited to do. We are going to do fan correspondence. If you want to be on the show, if you want your voice heard, not just doing social media, we're not just doing, call and ask a question. We'll have you on the show. And the first one to do this is my very, very good friend and a very big Michigan fan who I think still owes me a bet from last year, but this year might make up for it. Aaron McLaughlin, fellow Ferris State Bulldog graduate. He is the man. He is also a former member of the student radio station with me, and as I already teased, he's a big U of M fan. Aaron, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great. Basking in the glow of another U of M dominating defensive showdown win. It was kind of a tale of all 4 seasons on Saturday, John. I was actually there in East Lansing, excuse me. Well, about 7-8 minutes into the first quarter, my lovely girlfriend and I had to be politely asked to leave the venue as our lives were basically in danger. Don't know what. Apparently there was a lightning strike about 30 miles due south of the stadium. And we were escorted to lovely Wells Hall on Michigan State's lovely East Lansing campus, where we were cramped in with about 40 to 50,000 of, some of my good friends and some of my enemies, as you were. So that's kind of the tale of that. As far as the
complex. I've been there a couple times. I had one season, I might have been like 2014 or 2013. I went to like 2 games in a row at Michigan State with lightning delays, and it was really great luck there for me and the person I was going to the game with, and we waited it out at, I think actually one was with a parent and then one was with a significant other. We waited one of them out at the athletics complex, not the athletics, but like the rec complex, one of the tennis courts there. Okay. Where did you wind up waiting out the storm?
Not too far from, say, about a block east of the stadium in Wells Hall. Nice little mathematics, kind of complex, bunch of classrooms. Nobody knew where to go. We kind of all just, thankfully, all the classroom doors were unlocked. A bunch of people filed into these classrooms, got on the computer, started pulling up other games and watching other games.
So people just kind of did follow the leader into a bunch of random classrooms that weren't really being directed by anybody, you're saying?
No. It was directed by a public address announcement, and thankfully I had friends back home. Shout out to Mr. Hendrickson, my good friend, and my good friend Jason, for keeping me up to date on when the broadcast said, hey, this is when game's going to hit back on. And then you kind of just followed people out as soon as they started heading back towards the stadium. And what's kind of cool about this is you literally when you got into the game, very first off, we dang near missed kickoff because the security line was just so long to get into Spartan Stadium, let alone. Luckily we got in with about 5 minutes, or right after they did the coin toss, so about a minute and a half before kickoff, about 12:04 Eastern time, and then roughly about an hour later, that's when the clouds started to turn real dark black. Storm moved in, public address said, hey, we are now going to the ref came on the mic and said, hey, we're going to postpone the game. And then we got directed to it. I will say shout out to Michigan State Athletic Department for throwing it up on the video board of where to go and having all their staff informed of where to tell everybody to go. So really, they did a really good job that way. They could, however, do better with the getting into the game part, but everything else, it seemed, really good. Sad news is Michigan was driving at that point when the postponement did occur.
Yeah, it did seem that,
that was
after
kind of a
that,
step of the
Michigan State did get some momentum following the, or maybe like a stalled momentum. I don't know what it was, but at least for the first half, it went Michigan State's way following the changing of the, or following the game reset.
Yeah, and so once we got back, promptly Michigan went 3 and out right after that. Once we let the players back in and everything. One thing, John, that I did not see that has been stirring up social media quite a bit, a little pregame scuffle before the game. The Spartans doing their annual walk of the whole field.
So you've seen the video on social media, right? Like you didn't see it in person, but because no one's gonna really see that in person because that's really early in the game. So let's just jump right into the big controversy. So Michigan State, Michigan won. Let's do the quick rundown on the game and then the fallout. So so you got to safety, which is great. Got in and out, no issues with that.
Yeah.
And then there was a football game that just so happened to occur at the same time of you taking a tour of East Lansing. And the results of the football game is that a couple things. Michigan got their first road top 25 win in, 18 road top 25 wins. I would also contest that Michigan State shouldn't have been a top 25 team, but that's neither here nor there for the moment. Michigan's running game was impressive. Their offensive line was dominant. Shea Patterson, to me, and Brian Lewerke did not impress at all with their passing ability. And I think Shea Patterson... quick
sidebar on that. One thing that stood out to me is when Dantonio did go to his backup late there in the fourth quarter. Why wasn't Ladarius Jefferson the guy to go to versus the guy that they ended up going with? Because Ladarius Jefferson looked like he had a little better feeling of the offense at that point. Minus, given Michigan State's beat up offensive line, they're still missing a key player on the line. I can't remember the exact name. I know Beadle's was back that week, or this past week, but you're still missing Josiah Scott, Cody White, and then you lose Felton Davis III to a ruptured Achilles tendon. You never wish that on anybody. And don't get me wrong, Felton wasn't even a part of the offense when he went down with that injury, which is...
No, he was the only real passing option for Michigan State. So what happened with Michigan State is they're missing now their top, 3-4 wideouts through in and out of the game. They had injuries with some. And then White, a couple played, but throughout the season, Michigan State's lost offensive linemen. Their top 4 receivers, their top running back has had a lingering ankle injury. There are injuries on their secondary as well.
Back this game either.
And so Michigan State has basically been wiped out across the board. Like if you say any team, you're going to lose your top 4 receivers, some of your secondary, and some of your line, and your top running back. Like, what do you think is going to happen? So, it's more or less impressive.
Have a 6-6 year or 7-5.
Right, at best. Usually that's a recipe for a 3-9 team. Just that many injuries, 4 and 8. So, it's impressive to me that Michigan State was as competitive as they were, considering just the difference in health between both teams. But apparently, Lewerke, I'm not certain what's up with Lewerke. He only completed 5 passes out of 22 or so.
You know,
I mean,
see,
I think they did say there was a shoulder injury. Dantonio, it says it's not determined if Lewerke will play this upcoming week against Purdue because of a shoulder injury, but he's not looked right this season in general, and I don't know if this has been a lingering issue coming out of like training camp or if this is it going forward.
See, that's what I'm thinking is because last year, everybody's like, oh, Lewerke's the greatest thing to happen to Michigan State since Kirk Cousins. I'm like, okay. So I watched a little bit of Lewerke from last year over the weekend, and then I watched some Lewerke from this weekend. And it's leaps and bounds a mighty step back for Mr. Lewerke. He's got happy feet, to say the least.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like, is that the absence of your running back? Like, I mean, if you're used to having a running back and a dominant offensive line, their offensive line, even when it was healthy, wasn't really gelling. And then you lose, you don't know who to throw the ball to now. You don't have your first, second, and even third option if he could get that far in a progression. I don't know how strong his ability, his vision is, and his decision making is. But you lose your top two. Check one, check two, and then hand off or something like that, or check down, and there's nothing there. I mean, that's going to cause anybody to have happy feet, especially a younger quarterback. But I would say yes, he is an electric style
look at what
quarterback.
Patterson did first game against Notre Dame. He didn't really have that. Okay, who's my top one? Who's my two? Who's my three? Who's my four? And then. So after they tried to say, okay, we're going to throw the ball, and that didn't really work, Jim's like, okay, let's drop that back, and let's go power run, power I, harken back to the old Michigan days where strong old line, strong running game with Karan Higdon.
Well, it's a pro-style offense. I mean, especially in the weather, too. I mean, when it's raining out, which it was, bless you for going to that game. That's exactly the time when you need to run the ball.
It was good, football weather, but it was just, as Jim said, it was a tale of all 4 seasons. First you had sunny opening kickoff weather, then you had rain, then you got sleet, what almost ended up with snow, and then you had sun again. So you kind of had spring, fall, winter, summer, all in one game. And that's got to just confuse the heck out of the quarterbacks. And, Shea didn't look that great. The one great play he had was that 79-yard or 70-yard touchdown to Donovan Peoples-Jones. And
that back shoulder fade route.
I had a great view of that catch because I was sitting on that side of the field. So I was sitting at that side of the field on the 10. So I was able to see that play when Donovan caught it over his shoulder and then, raced away from the secondary. Michigan State missed, early in the game, they were sure tackled, and then something just happened where the O-line just wore down the defense, pushed them back, and started creating holes.
Well, I think I know what happened is the defense never got a break with Michigan State's offense not able to do anything. Eventually your defense, they need to get a break on the field. Your offense has to string together a couple first downs just to get guys breather. And that's what's going to happen is if, Michigan State's offense is inept against a good, if not, I wouldn't say Michigan's defense is great. I would say Michigan's defense is good and their run game is great. And I think couple,
absolutely.
And so I'm going to say that obviously Michigan State, I think best case scenario, 9-3, 8-4. Purdue is going to be a lot more of a challenge than you anticipated because right now, if you're looking at their losses, they got 3 losses right now. Big opponents left this year would be Ohio State and Purdue. So
he was coming off an emotional high,
right?
From Saturday, knocking off the Buckeyes in Ross-Ade Stadium.
Right. So you're saying Michigan State could go 8-4, but now with the Purdue, that might be 7-5. It really depends, I think, on if they figure out what the heck is up with Lewerke, which this is disappointing considering all the returning players this year. But with this much injuries, it's a wash. If you're above 500, I think with this much injuries, good for you. And then for Michigan,
Dantonio's a good coach. That is not without. Not without the Rams.
The last time they bottomed it out was 3-9. So I'll take an 8-4 as a Michigan State fan as opposed to 3-9. Now I think for Michigan, the real interesting question here is what is their potential? Because right now they're ranked top 10 in the nation. Everybody's really high on them, and I'm not hating on them. I'm just saying that good defense, great run game, But their passing game, I think, really, in order to be a great team, I think you need to have offensive balance. Because if one team matches up their defense, they've got a strong D-line or they've got a strong secondary, you're going to struggle. You need to be able to win at both facets of the game. And I think watching Shea Patterson, Michigan State's, I understand there was weather there, but Michigan State's secondary has been lit up by Northwestern. And Northwestern's, a solid team, and they're a feisty team. But Northwestern's not going to be any better than Michigan State by an overall record, I'm assuming, at the end of the season or so, or not by any significant margin. So seeing Chase Patterson really not do anything downfield, that really kind of, this was my first strong look at him, and I'm like, what is this hype here? In my mind, I'm thinking right now at the quarterback situation at Michigan, the last quarterback, tell me over the last 10 years, the only quarterback I can think of that I really liked as a downfield guy who really worked everything as a true pro style quarterback, or even your spread style offense, Denard Robinson or Devin Gardner, were offensive threats, but they never were fully a complete quarterback. Jake Rudock.
I would even go back. I would go Chad Henne.
Yeah, Jake Rudock and Chad Henne. If those are the only two quarterbacks coming out of Michigan that you can point to and say that's a quarterback that I want leading, a top 15 team in the nation. Right. What the heck?
But you know what? One stat that I heard over the course of Hate Week, as it's affectionately called here in Michigan State land, is that up until Saturday, Michigan has not thrown a passing touchdown against MSU since the fourth quarter of the 2011 contest.
Oof.
Which, correct me if I'm wrong, that's a Michigan State win, too, as well. So
if it's in the last 10 years, it's probably a Michigan State win.
Stat. And for Patterson to throw 2 touchdowns, I was okay with just 2 touchdowns because, Karan Higdon and Ben Mason basically.
Well, those weren't necessarily on. And this is something too that always. I'm watching more NFL games or college games, and I'm just getting frustrated with some quarterback play. Of, okay, you're checking the ball down, but the after the play. After the catch, that's on the receiver. The quarterback didn't throw you open or didn't let you that. That's the receiver just making an absolute play using their ability to score the touchdown.
Oh, absolutely.
A 4-down check isn't on the quarterback. A quarterback gets 30 yards and a touchdown on a 4-yard check down. No, that's not the quarterback. That's the receiver who made the play.
Oh, right. But I will say this: that play that Michigan State drew up, that little double reverse halfback pass. That scored the only MSU touchdown to Brian Lewerke was, a thing of beauty. And Jim praised all week. Oh, we're ready for their trickery. No problem.
No. You're ready for a banged up quarterback who can't complete a 5-yard pass. That's what they were ready for.
They've bit on that fake way too hard, and that's why it ended the way it did there.
So overall, what do you think of Shea Patterson? What are your concise thoughts rating him? How, if you're gonna give him a grade, a school grade, as a quarterback, what would you grade him as and say his strengths and weaknesses are and his potential for Michigan?
Strength is definitely a game manager, personally.
Oof.
He can throw the ball pretty dang far, but personally, okay, if we're looking at NFL draft realms here, I would say mid-first round, late second round pick.
I
think Shea needs to come back another year under Jim and work a little bit more, work with Pep a little bit on the offseason.
Did you just say Shea Patterson is a first-round pick?
I'd say butt end of the third round or first round, mid-30s to late second round. I'm talking about 60th to 70th.
I'm saying right now he'd be, just because of how many good quarterbacks there are nationwide, the dude would be is a training camp deal right now just because where he's at. I don't think he would get drafted just because you're going to look at other prospects, but it's just interesting to see everything that's happening.
And that's also depending on who comes out, though, too. They're expecting Shea to go because it's Shea. I don't think so. And you know what?
This is only his third season. He's still eligible for one more after this year.
Yeah. And you know what? One thing that bothers me with we're going to jump ahead a little bit here, the Nick Bosa stuff coming out last week. what has me scared beyond belief is that could Rashawn Gary pull a Nick Bosa? I personally, sitting here, don't think so. I think Rashawn Gary is literally just not healthy enough to play, which is why Jim has sat him for 3 weeks. And, having that fourth week where you don't have a game, you have an entire bye week. And Gary was on the field last week practicing. He just didn't travel to East Lansing because Jim said even in his weekly presser today, it didn't make sense. I'm going to take the 74 players that are going to travel and have a chance to play in that game.
Now, for those listening who might not know, Rashawn Gary is a Michigan defensive lineman, a very talented player, but he's just been unavailable for the last 3 straight games with a shoulder injury, and then the previous 2 games, he couldn't do much because of the injury as well.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing is it's a shoulder-related ailment. It's about, I heard it's a sprained AC joint, is what I heard that the official diagnosis is. So I'm like, okay, that's actually a really serious injury because as a edge rusher, you need your upper body to do your swim moves and all your different moves as a defensive lineman in order to affect the quarterback. But then when you have, and I'm going to throw a shout out here to Josh Uche. My man has stood up and he's balled out. He is top 30 in sacks in the NCAA with 5. And that's just with him spotting on third down and now playing, basically filling in the void for Rashawn Gary. And Rashawn Gary wanted Chase to come back this year in order to form the best edge rushing duo in the country.
Okay, now you mentioned Chase. I want to ask you about Chase. I want to ask you about Chase really quick. So Chase Winovich, he says sometimes you got to put little brother in his place post game. I mean, there was antics in the pregame where they one player was cleating, like digging up the Spartan logo. There was a little bit of shoveling,
Yep.
And then Winovich says post game, put Michigan's little brother in his place. My thought on that, as someone who is more biased towards Michigan State, is that's just a ridiculous statement because I'm like, when was the last time this dude won playing Michigan State? I mean, he's got what, maybe 1 win against the school? I mean, in the last 10 years, I don't think.
Chase has 2.
Okay, does Michigan's little brother actually hold any weight nowadays, or does it only hold weight for just the year? If we're talking last 10 years, I know that there's 3 different ways that you can look at this, is how I view it. You can look overall in the grand scheme of it. Michigan has it about 66 to 38, something along those parks. Historically, Michigan dominates. Now we're going to talk since Lloyd Carr retires. Following Lloyd Carr's retirement, Michigan State has dominated the series. That's been the last 11 years.
Not even a question.
So the last 11 years, I would say, it's not even what have you done for me lately. The last 10 years of anything, any relationship, really defines it. Like you could talk, let's say about a marriage. Like, let's say that Michigan State is a contentious marriage. Let's scale it down a little bit here. Let's say it's a long marriage. They've been married together for 40 years. They're entering their 60s now. Maybe the first, 30 years, let's say, 35 years of the relationship were pretty solid. I mean, it was one way, it was good. But the last 5 years have been absolutely awful. Like just something where you're asking everybody to get therapy, just divorce, it's going to be better for you. Now, let's apply that same concept to Michigan fans and the concept of little brother. So for the first long time, you can brag for this. But really, for the formative years, for the majority of people attending U of M now or beyond, or their graduates, they haven't known a good Michigan football team outside of the one Harbaugh blip and the one Brady Hoke blip.
Oh, agreed.
So does little brother actually hold weight if we look at it through that lens?
Yeah, and, Chase said after the Wisconsin game 2 weeks ago, on ABC, said, "Hey, this is the start of the revenge tour." They came in. We went to their place last year, talking about Wisconsin. They disrespected us. They beat us fair and square. And then they played Michigan State, got incredibly embarrassed. And Chase is like, I'm out for blood. I'm out for revenge, and rightfully so. But this, to me, this Michigan team. And I've not been praising them. I've been kind of trying to hold it in check a little bit. But this team has got something special going on down there in Ann Arbor. And I can't wait to see, the pivotal 2 games that are looking at me is Penn State in 2 weeks and Ohio State at the end of the year. But don't forget to jump to Indiana. Indiana, to me, can be a trap game on homecoming.
Now, so let's talk. Best case scenario, obviously, they go 11-1. They win the Big Ten championship game. They make the playoffs. I mean, that's easy. Now, realistically, though, do you see? I would say that they're going to drop 1 game against Penn State or Ohio State. Just looking at it, Notre Dame is not a great team. No. I mean, they're a top 30 team, but they're not a great team. And Michigan dropped him while fully healthy. I understand it was early in the season. But still, looking at that, that's a pretty decent blemish. And then they played Northwestern very close. Now, Northwestern's feisty, but also not necessarily a great team. Those things together would lead me to believe that, Penn State, Ohio State, those are both kind of 50-50 games. Odds are they're going to drop one of those, right?
They probably could. I don't know. The Ohio State game is looking a little bit more in Michigan's favor with the departure of Nick Bosa. And then not only that, but one of their junior defensive linemen has had to medically retire from the sport of football, similar to the to the Northwestern kid, the running back, that had to medically retire right before their game, and how inspired they came out and played for him. If I'm Urban Meyer, I'm looking, okay, so this kid just retired. Not only do we lose Nick Bosa, we lose this other kid. So now we're dropping flies in the defensive line here. Something's fishy in Columbus, and I don't know if the players are starting to kind of pull away from Urban. It's kind of how the team last year he was at Florida kind of pulled away from him before Urban decided, yep, I'm going to step aside, I'm going to retire. And I don't know if you listen to Paul Feinbaum, but Feinbaum is of the mind that he thinks Urban is gone after this year from Columbus.
I doubt it. I personally...
I doubt it. And Feinbaum is he's a big mouthpiece, but I don't know with all this departure work. Bosa's like, yep, I'm just going to go recover from the surgery, away from school, away from the team. If I'm NFL scouts, that looks like a really big red flag.
No. To me, that's just the smart play you're seeing nowadays. I mean, it's... If you don't have like a crazy insurance policy, which, I mean, there are a lot of players who now have insurance policies, but that's maybe, $2 million max, like something to help as like maybe pay off some debt, get something set. I mean, you can actually do well with that money, but you think of, income tax over the years, all that stuff, that's something to help you through your life, but not your nowhere near possible career earnings that you can use from just a couple NFL seasons or even a rookie contract in the NFL. So I'm going to say, as an uncompensated athlete with not a crazy insurance policy, and you can make money, it's like somebody, sitting out like a Michael Porter Jr. in the NBA who had all the back injuries. Now, part of that was just medical too, but if you can go on to the next level and get paid, why risk like Le'Veon Bell? He's trying to get to his next contract without racking up any damages or mileage. I'm like, if that's what it takes for you to get there, especially in college football where there's not even week to week or a signing bonus, I'm for that. But I think that's a different discussion for a different day. Talking on this. So, final thoughts on Michigan State. There were some post game comments. What do you think of the conduct between the two coaches? Mark Dantonio said it was BS with Jim Harbaugh talking about Mark Dantonio smiling pregame and everything surrounding it. To me, in my opinion, I was kind of hoping that I did look at the video of the pregame and where Harbaugh accuses Dantonio of smiling when Michigan State players knock off headphones off of a Michigan player. I would also say the Michigan player deserved it, but I would say that all around I would have expected better behavior, or no, I wouldn't have expected better behavior from Harbaugh because I expect bluntness from him. But I would have hoped all around that on both sides, players and coaches, that it would have just been handled a little bit better or just more professional.
Absolutely. And this whole thing, the whole altercation pregame, Devin Bush marking up the Spartan logo, to me, it's just going to fuel fire for next year's game in Ann Arbor. Personally, I think that's why neither coach is willing to drop it per se because they want to continue to fuel that fire and be like, look, that was not called for. And Jim doubled down on it today in his presser and said, I still believe there was malicious intent involved and all this other stuff. And one thing real quickly to touch back on the game is I believe it was late in the fourth quarter or early in the fourth quarter where there was a unsportsmanlike conduct penalty where a Michigan State quarterback, I don't remember who it was, and one of the Michigan defenders both slid on the sideline, and Michigan got flagged for an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty.
Well, there was multiple unsportsmanlike conduct penalties throughout the game on both sides, and sometimes at the same time.
Oh, absolutely. That one to me just sticks out as like, okay, that was some utter BS there. It's like that was complete accidental behavior. It wasn't intended, all this stuff. But maybe that's just me. Maybe I saw it a different way than most fans, and I'm open to that. But I will say this as a final note, that if my boss, Ryan McCullum, if you're listening, if you see this, because it will be on my socials, you still owe me a bet tomorrow, sir. Whether it's wearing maize and blue or taking me out to lunch, your choice.
Yes, and last year's bet between you and me was, I believe, wearing Michigan State apparel, and I can't remember if there was anything else around that, but I think I'll let that slide. There was Taco Bell involved, I think. Yeah, I think there was some Taco Bell involved, but, I think I'll let that slide following the embarrassing Michigan State. Embarrassing / not embarrassing because of injuries lost, where it's somewhat of a cop-out, but also just if you got to be able to throw the ball more than 5 yards. Anyways, I think that's going to do it for our Michigan State talk. Aaron, if you want to let the folks know, where can they follow you on social media?
On my Facebook, Aaron McLaughlin, and on my Twitter at TigersFanForLife2. And, Snapchat, anything, Instagram. It's Aaron.McLaughlin92. But you know what, John? I'm looking forward to the rest of the season. Great bye week for the Michigan Wolverines coming up. Going to practice hard, hopefully Rashawn. And real quick, here's some injury news. Tariq Black did play in that game a few snaps. Is that a sign of things to come? I don't know. We're going to tease that for next week, folks.
Well, Aaron, thank you so much for coming on the debut episode of the Fan Correspondent. I really appreciate you coming on. I appreciate your time, and it's absolutely great to catch up with you. It's been a bit since May.
Absolutely. It's been a long time.
Thank you so much. And again, folks, that was the voice of Ferris State's own Aaron McLaughlin. Aaron and I graduated together in May. He was the first president of the second version of Bulldog Radio, and is part of the reason why I am doing this now today in terms of continuing on podcasting and pursuing my love in this field. So a big thank you to him. And Turtle as the ambient or natural sound. I finally remembered the term I wanted to say that I edited out in the intro. But yes, the industry term is nat sound or natural, or at least that's what we call it here in this place I work at. Anyways, so Michigan State. Going to be interesting to see what happens going forward, especially with injuries on both sides and where their progress is. I did mention that I did want to talk Pistons basketball really quick. Detroit stands right now at 2-0 and heading into tonight's game, which would be for the 23rd, if you're going to hear this later, which probably will be. And I'll update the post-game on Thursday's version of the show. Right now, they've put up 2 wins against not-so-impressive teams, the Brooklyn Nets and the Chicago Bulls, both kind of rebuilding teams. 103 over 100 against Brooklyn, 118, 116 against Chicago. Neither of that is ideal. But what has been great is Blake Griffin. He has put up 26 points in rebounds and assists, and then 33 points against the Bulls. He's been good. Ish Smith his three-point shooting has continued, but at a high rate, and he actually closed out the game as at the point guard against Chicago with Reggie Jackson playing the 2 guard. That'll be interesting to see. I could see Reggie Jackson maybe kind of like CJ McCollum in that fact. Maybe less shooting, less defense, but still that would be an interesting way because Ish Smith, if his 3-point shooting is legit, he's the better defender. He is a more willing passer, and I think the offense runs better through him, and that could be interesting to see running a 2-guard set long-term. Drummond has continued to shoot the 3-pointer that he did in the preseason, which is not ideal. He is not quite a 7-footer, an almost 7-footer who's shooting threes, never done it before. really on a regular basis, and he's like attempting 3 a game or something like that, and they're not connecting. They don't look good. No one's going to honor it. And then he's done fadeaways and mid-range jumpers, and I'm all for him having more scoring, but it has to be within reason. If he's not scoring effectively, he's eating away shots from guys like Blake Griffin, Ish Smith, Langston Galloway, Luke Kennard, Reggie Bullock, guys who are going to be effective floor spacers and higher value shots, as opposed to a weird mid-range floater or something like that you know is not going to connect. Go to the 3-point line instead. Just the numbers. That's how basketball works at this point in time, until there is different rules in place to affect how the 3-point shot is valued. So they're going to play tonight against the 76ers. They actually might even be without Andre Drummond, who might be out with the flu bug that Reggie Bullock had earlier. Would be interesting. Would get expanded time for Zaza Pachulia, who has looked actually really good setting screens and team defense. And I could argue that the offense flows better with Zaza on the court than Drummond, because he's passing it to willing guys and getting a lot of good screens set for them. So kind of the whole Draymond Green situation, where you kind of hate the player if he's not on your team and love him if he's on yours. And he is a former All-Star, too, if you guys forgot about that. Other interesting matchups in that will be Markelle Fultz versus Reggie Jackson Ish Smith. What's going to be the go-to for their long-term? Fultz seems to be just going to be dragged along, but then there's no shooting on this team outside of Covington and J.J. Redick for the 76ers. Redick, the 3-point marksman, who made his mark known with the Clippers out in L.A. And then from there, I don't know. I think Detroit has the deeper bench. Philly, between Simmons and Embiid, they've got 2 solid players that can really challenge Detroit if they're not having Drummond either engaged defensively or just not available in the first place. Blake Griffin, to see him match up, to see who goes against him defensively too, I think that'll be interesting. I think he can probably do a lot of damage to Ben Simmons, so that'll be fun to see. And then it probably comes down to 3-point shooting from there, which Redick would give the upper hand, you think, to Philly, but who knows? They have not been overly impressive this year right now. Just looking at their schedule, they're 2-1, and that's with a loss to Chicago, a loss to Boston 105-87, a 127-108 win over Chicago, so comparison there, and then a 1-point win against Orlando. So the Orlando one's a little less impressive. Chicago they beat out, but who knows what mutual opponents actually mean or don't mean. So I'm excited for the Pistons. Luke Kennard did not get playing time against the Bulls, which was shocking. Dwayne Casey says there's only 15 guys, and the 2-point guard set might eat away from it. But Kennard shot 43% as a rookie. And Galloway, even though he looked good in preseason, has not shot particularly well. He's been solid, but not spectacular. And then you haven't gotten anything from Stanley Johnson, who missed the first game. And you haven't seen anything either from GR3. GR3 has looked competent, but in like a James Ennis sort of competent way of he's a body out there who in theory can space the floor, but has not done anything with volume. So if I could say Drummond shooting 3-pointers or Johnson shooting 3s or Kennard shooting 3s, I would rather have Kennard because he should be the highest percentage player on this team based off of last year's performance. Plus, he's a ball handler and all that. But possibly, what some people have marked online too is that Kennard might be feeling limited and suffocated a little in Casey's system. As in, what it should do to everyone else is eliminate the long 2s, the really long mid-range jumpers. That should be a 3. And instead, everything is either at the rim or at the 3-point line. Unless your name is Andre Drummond, for some reason, you get away with that. Kennard does actually do a good pull-up mid-range jumper, but it is in rhythm. It's more of a free throw line jumper, and it's within spacing. I mean, his game, just think along the lines of a Manu Ginobili, a poor man's version of Manu Ginobili who shoots really well. I think you take that, and I'm not sure why he's not getting more minutes, especially if Casey was able to develop so many young players with Toronto. It might be because Kennard has the knee injury. He was seen icing it up. That also might just be a standard measure after warm-ups or anything for him if he's going to sit for a while, because he did have a minor knee issue that he rehabbed from in the offseason. So who knows? I'm excited about the Pistons. Blake Griffin is absolutely fantastic. I don't think there would have been any way that Detroit would have won the last 2 games, considering how close they were if Tobias was in the game. Griffin takes over, and honestly, I want to see the Pistons make a trade, do something to get Griffin real players around him. I don't know if Drummond's not even looking like it. And just in terms of his basketball IQ and how he's playing, his stats are great, but his defense isn't there, and he's just killing shot selection. Reggie Jackson has looked effective at times, but his defense is poor, and his turnovers, and as seen at the end of the Brooklyn game, just look it up. Blake Griffin yelled. Blake Griffin's been a little grouchy at the end of games because of poor performance. But anyways, Kemba Walker, Blake Griffin, Luke Kennard, Reggie Bullock, get him one more guy out there. I could see a Kemba-Blake Griffin combination doing decent damage in the Eastern Conference. I'm not saying they would beat Chicago or anything, but if you have Blake Griffin's contract for this much, for how long, might as well make an investment and make this guy's years worth it. Because you're paying for it anyways, might as well get the best version of the product out there. So enough about basketball. For those of you who don't care about basketball, college basketball will be coming underway soon. The AP Top 25 just released their polls. Michigan State is the highest ranked team there. No surprise. And Michigan is ranked as well. So as the seasons get closer on the college end, we will preview that in a moment. And finally, I did mention that I would talk about Daredevil. I did something inhuman. I thought I was going to do maybe a write-up or anything. Did not happen over the weekend, but Friday, I marathoned through all of Season 3 of Daredevil. In short, I really liked it. It was a good, solid season. Interesting rewatching Daredevil Season 1 and leading up to Season 3. Season 3 is very much the same idea of he's the man in the black suit as opposed to the Daredevil outfit. He's fighting Wilson Fisk. More Wilson Fisk, Vincent D'Onofrio, also known from CSI, and I think Red Dragon, the second Silence of the Lambs book. Red Dragon, the second Hannibal Lecter book. I'm not positive. So, I highly recommend watching it, though it is a little bit similar to Season 3. It doesn't really explore new ground, but it does introduce Bullseye, who is fantastic to watch and is highly enjoyable. So, good for Season 3. Sad that Luke Cage and Iron Fist are now both canceled in the last week. Season 3 of Iron Fist was going to go to explore places, and Season 2 did a lot better job than Season 1, and I was interested to see where it'd go. Season 3 of Luke Cage, I didn't really need to see Luke Cage as like a Kingpin-like character working with Harlem, but I think maybe the two of them together could explore those stories and give a better character dynamic and contrast and foils to help bring something out. So maybe they make a spin-off Heroes for Hire. Anyways, that's going to be it for me rambling today. Remember, you can follow the show at The 3 Point on Twitter. It's 3 Point is spelled out THREE point. So The 3 Point on Twitter. Same thing for Facebook, facebook.com/The 3 Point. We're going to have podcast links down below as well for Google Play. iTunes One is incoming in the near future. And that'll be it. Thank you so much for listening. I'm John Gustin. Follow me at JGustin113. And I will talk to you Thursday.